The role of the women in the ancient Greek society is really different, in particular because we have to understand that the women were in relationship with their city state, and in particular, each city state has his particular order, has a particular law, has a particular right. But at the same time, for example, if we have to consider the life in Athens, we have to understand that the women lived into the house. Instead, the men, their husbands, lived at the same time in the private life in the house, but at the same time in the political life outside the house. This is really important to understand what was the life in the ancient Greek society, in particular because women have had to live in the house and considered the children and educated the children, etc. In particular, when they were babies, when they were very little. But at the same time, the political life it was in relation with men, in particular because men in the ancient Greek society had the political rights. Women didn't have political rights. They had only the civil rights. Instead, men had the political rights. The men, in particular, the citizens, the true citizens, were men, and men, the citizens that were men, had the political rights, but also the civil rights. Women instead only the civil rights. In this sense, the men who went into the political life had to consider also his actions in relationship with the private life. In fact, his actions in political life could be considered into his private life. And for example, in Athens, there was the ostracism. For example, a man that was in relation with the ostracism, and some people consider him in relation with this practice, had to leave the city. In this sense, his actions, the actions of this man in the private life and in his political life, in particular the action in the political life, had an impact in the private life. Therefore, men, the citizens, considered really important the actions of their wives. In fact, a good wife and the actions that a wife applied were really important in relation with the political life, and in particular in relation and in front of the public opinion. This is really important because we understand the situation in Athens during, for example, the 5th century BC, where the political life had an impact in the private life. At the same time, for example, we understand that the women had to live into the house, but at the same time, they could not leave the house without the husband, or probably they could go to the theater, but we don't have a secure knowledge about this. But, and at the same time, the relationship with the democracy, it was really important because the democracy, it was all in relationship with a consideration of the tyrants, or better, the tyrants in the ancient Greek society, in particular in Athens, were considered really dangerous. Therefore, a good woman had also to administrate really well the house in relation with the politics of his husband. And in particular, the wife, the girls, the women couldn't have the private property. They could only transmit the private property to the men, to their future husband in this sense. In fact, the property of their father or of their brother, if their father was dead, transmit they transmitted this property to their husband. In fact, for example, this is the cause that create some relationships between families, in particular because each family didn't want leave or forget their property. This is important. In fact, this connection create an important connection between some family which has a particular connection between them. For example, between a relation of friendship, which support, for example, the men and the women, but the men and the woman, but at the same time their interest and the interest of each family. This is really interesting because we understand that in the situation of Athens, women didn't have private property, but they administrated, or better, they educated the children, and there was a sort of administration that was in relationship with men and women. Instead, for example, the women in Sparta, they have more freedom in relation with the women in Athens, in particular because women in Sparta administrated freely the private property, in particular because their husbands were, for example, Spartans, warriors who fought each day, all day, and at the same time, therefore, it was important that someone considered the property, considered the lands, considered the security of the lands in relation and in front of the slaves. And the slaves were the ilots, some people that Sparta conquered the land and conquered these people that cultivated from Sparta. And the women of Spartans supported the economy of Sparta with their work, for example, the economy of the land, and they controlled also the lots and slaves, and they worked. In this sense, the politics of Sparta was a military politics which considerably important, fought to conquer new territories, new lands, and at the same time have new slaves and warriors. The men continue to fight. At the same time, the women, the wives of the aristocracy, of the aristocrats people, continue to administrate the land and the slavery in general.